Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Flaming Lips album, American Head. Flaming Lips are a legendary Neo-Psychedelia band, and you know what? I'm going to come out and say it. I have never been that wild about the Flaming Lips. Their whole 80s and early 90s output just has never really done much for me. For me, though, I have enjoyed some of their classic must-listen-to albums. For one, I always loved the Soft Bulletin ever since I first heard it. And Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots as well. Those are pretty classic albums I have nothing bad to say about. But since then, the Flaming Lips in the 2000s have honestly been very back and forth with me. I wasn't really into the very flashy and gaudy At War with the Mystics. However, despite its ridiculous hour-and-a-half runtime, I actually like the majority of Embryonic. And this shocks people when I say this, like, a lot. The Terror is actually one of my favorite Flaming Lips albums. I think that album is so otherworldly and dark and genuinely interesting. But ever since, man, me and the Flaming Lips can't get on the same page. I really wasn't into Oxymolody. I thought there was a lot of interesting ideas here, but there was also a lot of really weird ones. And 2019's King's Mouth was very average as far as I'm concerned. It had some great tracks, but a weird narrative, and once again, just sloppy ideas. Now, I have been harsh on the Flaming Lips in the last couple of years. However, they seem to have released a string of some of their best songs since the early 2000s leading up to this album. Let's chat about it. This album starts off with Will You Return When You Come Down. Right off the bat, sonically, this is a great start. Yes, it's very fluffy and psychedelic like the majority of the Flaming Lips material. But the production here is fantastic, and more than anything, there seems to be no frills in sight, no ridiculous narratives. And that goes for a lot of this track. As a matter of fact, it goes for a lot of this album. This seems to be very back to basic for the Flaming Lips. There's no experiments, there's no narratives that go nowhere. It just seems to be Flaming Lips doing what they do best. There's just such a sincerity to this track. I can't help but really just sit back and relax and take everything in. Like I said, a lot of this album is the Flaming Lips going back to basics, but I think that's what they really needed to do. I love watching the Lightbugs go as well. Honestly, this is just a really super colorful Neo-Psychedelia track. Just so laid back, and while her contributions are much bigger later in the album, Casey Musgrave's very haunting vocals here just are really fascinating. It's an absolutely delightful little interlude. On the other hand, Flowers on Neptune 6 is even fluffier, even airier. But here we almost get like a duet between Wayne Coyne and Casey Musgraves, and you know what? It is lovely. I mean, it's also just so chock full of emotion. It's been a while since I've heard ballads from the Flaming Lips come off this good. It's just so full of life, and while no, there's nothing here groundbreaking, I would so much rather listen to this than some of the weird narratives going on in their last few projects. I also really like At the Movies on Quaaludes. Here's a spoiler alert for you guys. A lot of this album are just sort of very dreary emotional drug anthems, at least a good chunk of it. But you know what? The Flaming Lips have a way of taking that and making it seemingly really classy and genuinely emotional. Like, these tracks get genuinely touching at times. Once again, it's such a simple formula, but it's one that the Flaming Lips mastered 20 years ago, and you know what? I'd rather hear that now. For a band that's on literally their 30th album or whatever it is, it's all I really want to hear. Now, there are some flaws to this album. There are a handful of tracks that I just genuinely don't like. Dinosaurs on the Mountain, this track is just a little too dainty for my liking. The production is still a really strong selling point, but compared to just how emotional and heartfelt so much of this album is, this just seems like a cop-out. A lot of this album is very full of life. This is not. Mother I've Taken LSD, on the other hand, honestly has a lot of the same qualities as the rest of the album. You can certainly argue that. But for me, this track is just way too overblown. I actually kind of like the over-the-top, very grandiose vibes of the instrumental. As far as that goes, they end up doing that a whole lot better later on in the album. But this is just pushing into a direction that I just don't like hearing the Flaming Lips. Not to mention, Wayne Coyne's performance here just doesn't do it for me overall. And Brother Eye, for me, is my least favorite track here. This track is just super annoying. It sounds like the Flaming Lips are trying to do 6 different songs at once. Result isn't emotional or beautiful or even interesting, it's just kind of obnoxious. The vocoder vocals are really sort of cheesy, to be honest, and that one synth blaring throughout the track is headache-inducing. This is the sort of track that would have shown up on Oxymolody a couple of years ago, and I really just would have wrote it off. Assassins of Youth, I'm kind of in the middle of the road on. I don't hate the instrumental here, that's totally fine. but the production on this track doesn't even come close to the rest of the album. And from a performance standpoint, this track is awkward. Once again, I feel like Wayne Coyne and the Flaming Lips are trying so freaking hard to put like 10 tracks in one. Why? And My Religion Is You as a finale here is just very average, very middle of the road. I don't know, there's just been so many great ballads here. This one just does not hit the spot. I like the instrumental. I think the bulky production is great. Even Wayne Coyne's performance is fine. It's just the writing here as a finale, I think it's just a little underwritten. Outside of that though, I would go as far as to say this is my favorite Flaming Lips project since like Yoshimi Battles of the Pink Robots. You and Me Selling Weed is honestly one of the best surprises here. I don't know why I thought I was just going to completely write this track off, but the Flaming Lips here do the impossible. They make the art of selling weed really romantic and cute and adorable. Not only that, but between the production and the instrumental here, this is just getting me choked up, man. It's beautiful. I mean, you can say that this is a little bit of the hipper side of the Flaming Lips these days. There's a little bit more production twists. But for a 5-minute track from the Flaming Lips in 2020, this does not outdo its welcome and honestly is really sharp. And Mother Please Don't Be Sad is my favorite track here. I wasn't expecting this album to be so tragic, but yet here we are. This is absolutely freaking gorgeous, and what a lavish instrumental. And in the narrative of the album, because there is one, just not nearly as ridiculous as the ones on their last few albums, this is perfect. Even the massive amount of sound effects and just how immense this instrumental gets by this finale is fantastic. And When We Die When We're High as a follow-up instrumental interlude is really classy as well. Not only that, but the sort of upbeat, spacey nature of this track is just what the doctor ordered right about now, but just so animated. There's just so many layers to it. There's so much going on. I feel like every time I listen to it, I hear something I haven't heard before. And God and the Policeman featuring Casey Musgraves is really nice. Now, I had a lot of hope for this one, and it really fulfilled itself. I love the twinkling instrumental, the continued narrative, not to mention there is some legitimate chemistry here between Casey Musgraves and the Flaming Lips, which is much more than I could say about, Miley Cyrus and the Flaming Lips. It's not the biggest statement on this album, but it's incredibly likable. So the Flaming Lips on American Head go back to basics in a big way. But you know what that means? There are no ridiculous narratives in sight. It's not Wayne Coyne and the Flaming Lips trying to appease anything right now. They're not trying to be hip anymore. They're really just stripping their sound way back and going back to what they did in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the result is some of their best songs since then. I mean, there might be a few tracks here and there that don't hit as hard as others, but the sheer emotion and heartfelt ballads on this album just really do it for me. And you know what? For me, a guy who has been very harsh on the Flaming Lips over the last, 9 years or so, this was a wonderful surprise. I'm feeling a very decent to strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.